The Citi Double Cash Card presents tips for talking sports at the office. Number 8, be informed.
I'm going to list some random stats that don't really mean anything.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. I'm nodding, but I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's not working.
Wouldn't it be great if everyone said what they meant? The Citi Double Cash Card does. It lets you earn double cash back with 1% when you buy and 1% as you pay. The Citi Double Cash Card. Double means double.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are. We're back in better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And welcome to Wednesday. With a preseason game on the schedule tonight, a major championship beginning in golf tomorrow, and episode 1 of Hard Knocks in the books or on the DVRs, depending. Golic, nice to have that back now. It really feels like football.
That always seems like the start of football when you start that show. I love that show, and it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for those that may not know, and for that reason, the obvious star of this is going to be Jameis Winston, who's Coach Dirk Cutter basically in this episode said, I know you're not Tom Brady, but you're basically Aaron Rodgers. Start to be like Aaron Rodgers. I mean, for the most part, that's what he said. Time for you at 23 years old to be the great quarterback that everybody thinks you're going to be. And, you know, so it was the normal kind of setup in Hard Knocks. You saw the hometown of Jameis Winston, the tough upbringing to where he is now and such. But, you know, then you get into practice, you know, you get a linebacker cussing out blocking dummies, you know, and you get, I think one of the cool things was what the FaceTime with the rookie running back, Jeremy Nichols and Snoop Dogg, because this running back played in Snoop Dogg has a youth football league in L.A., and this kid was a star running back of it, so Snoop's giving him some inspiration, you know, as he's getting ready to try and make the team. So, you know, it always has a little bit of everything in it. So I love when it comes back, and I do think when you get to that facility and on the practice field and such, you do get a pretty realistic look at what's going on.
I also thought that the show was stolen last night by the motivational speaker, Eric Thomas.
Yeah.
He was terrific. I did not get to watch the entire thing last night, but this morning
that's supposedly what Jameis listens to every morning when he gets up, right?
He is a relatively well-known – I have to admit, I didn't know much about him before this, but now I've read all about him this morning. He's a well-known motivational speaker, and I wound up YouTubing. You can go on YouTube and you can watch the entire speech that they used portions of on last night's Hard Knocks, and it's really good. I mean, extraordinarily good. So of all the things that I saw from last night's episode, that was the one that jumped out at me, but one way or another, pretty interesting. And the other thing I'll say quickly before off the top is I cannot believe we've come all this way and you haven't commented on my haircut.
You got a haircut?
I got a significant haircut yesterday. I had been letting it grow out a little, and I decided that it was getting to be a little too much, especially in the summertime, so I cut a lot of it off yesterday, and somehow you've managed to go 3 full minutes and not even know.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
We've been together, this is our 18th year?
Yeah.
18th and final year,
Correct.
by the way. In any of those times, you've gotten haircuts during these 18 years?
A couple times, yeah.
Have I noticed one?
No, and you know what? It would be nice.
It would be if the last time.
Nice if just once you said, Greeny, I notice you got – you don't even have to say I like your haircut.
Right.
You could just say, I notice you look different than you did yesterday.
So it's – what is it? It's August whatever.
Today's August 9th.
Okay, and this show is done about the middle of November.
17.
How many more haircuts will you get in between now and then that I'll have a chance to notice for the first time in our 18 years?
That's 3 months. Yeah, like 6 haircuts.
You go once –
I go every other week.
That's right. We had this discussion, this ridiculous discussion.
I try to go every other week, and that way it doesn't
driving a
always
Mercedes?
look like she's doing awful well for herself. That way it doesn't look like that jarringly different.
Right.
But this time
you just said jarringly. You just said I got
because we had put together a schedule or a system where Tina and I we decided we were going to let it grow out. And it was getting really long, and I decided I hated it. And so I went in yesterday. Let me tell you, the floor around me looked as though we had shaved Chewbacca.
So can I ask another question?
Sure, go ahead.
You and your barber have a plan? You discuss things?
Well, I mean, I give her a little, marching orders when I sit down in the chair.
So it sounds like you filled out some sort of game plan to get a haircut.
But, I mean, there's a 30-second conversation that takes place. I want to leave it. For a while, I said to her, I want to let it grow longer. Let's just sort of clean it up a little bit, but let's let it grow out a little bit and see how I like it.
Right.
And then yesterday I sat down and I said, remember how we were growing it out? I hate it. And so we chopped it off. We chopped it. We went in there and we chopped it.
The discussion, I walk in, I see my guy, hey, John. He says, hey, Mike. He says the same. I said, yep, and that's it.
Now, for those of you watching on television, they're going to put up a picture of me from yesterday. Well, it's
exactly the same.
Well,
it looks exactly the same.
That is
for
not
those listening on radio only. We put a split screen up of you yesterday. You got your hair cut after the show yesterday. I take it right. It wouldn't be before. It's exactly the same.
That is not
you got 3 hairs cut, and you probably paid $80.
First of all, it was $24.
Are you kidding
me? Could we have gotten a more representative shot?
It's a picture of your head with your hair on it. What more representative
shot caught me with that expression on my face in the middle of it? Thought my eyes are like half closed. They look like I'm in a Cheech and Chong movie. It's just a ridiculously.
Well, that's a you problem.
Well,
okay?
I'm just saying. I look like I'm.
But we can see the hair on your head, and it looks exactly the same as today.
I don't think it looks the same. It actually looks more different than it would appear.
Quite honestly,
it's a ridiculous shot.
Quite honestly, your hair looks a little darker today.
No,
something else you did?
I did not do a
thing.
So
you cut 3 hairs off it and colored it.
There was no coloring.
All right.
Absolutely none. This was done in a public place. I have witnesses. All right, I'm certainly glad I brought that up. Let's move on.
Off the top.
Here we go, Golic. And Chris Sale continues to pitch his way toward an American League Cy Young Award. Another dominant performance last night for the Red Sox.
Yeah, he had 13 strikeouts, 8 innings he threw. It's his 10th career game with no runs allowed and at least 12 strikeouts, breaking a tie with Clayton Kershaw for the most among active pitchers, and the Rays don't want to see him anymore either. He's averaging 13 and a half strikeouts per 9 innings in his career against the Rays. Overall, it was Sale's 15th game with 10 or more strikeouts this season. The only other Red Sox pitcher, I think people can figure this out, with at least 15 10 strikeout games in a single season. Pedro Martinez did it twice. In 2000, he did 15 times, and in 1999, the year before, he did it 19 times.
Off the top.
Meanwhile, the next favorite to win the American League Cy Young did not disappoint either, and that's your guy, Corey Kluber.
Yep, be leading the Indians to the World Series this year. Kluber, he pitched a complete game for the 4th time this season, tying his career high. His 11 strikeouts mean he and Randy Johnson are the only pitchers to strike out at least 8 batters in 13 straight games in a single season since the mound was moved to its current distance a long time ago.
Off the top.
I mentioned we got football tonight, and we do. The Panthers and the Texans, week 1 of the NFL preseason is upon us.
No Cam Newton tonight. Still, coming back from the shoulder situation, but we'll see Deshaun Watson. Tom Savage will get the start for the Houston Texans. You'll see Deshaun Watson, and on the other side, the 8th pick overall, Christian McCaffrey, who has really been a buzz in that camp. I remember when he did a one-on-one in pass against Luke Kuechly, caught the ball, put a move on him. That was on social media forever. Yep. What he did there. So a lot of people looking at how he's going to help that offense. So those are the 2 rookies people are looking at tonight.
And the veteran J.J. Watt also expected.
He is going to play tonight. Yes,
you get a little action
off the top
tonight. I find this an interesting story. The Patriots became the first NFL team to buy their own plane to fly to games, or I should say that differently. They bought planes. So no other team, according to our Darren Ravel, no other NFL team owns its own plane. They lease them and all of that. The Patriots didn't just get one, they got 2. They got 1, they got a backup.
They bought 2 and not, some little prop jobs. They bought 2 767 Boeing wide-body jets, immediately retrofitted every seat, tore them out, and put all first-class seats in there. And that's what happens when you have all those Lombardi trophies, is you can do things like that, and they're just going to travel in style, or I should say, forgetting style, for the players' sake, they're going to travel in comfort, because that was always a thing. When we got on our charter planes, who got the first-class seats? And every team did it differently, whether it was starters or vets. All you knew is if you were a young guy, you were sitting in the back, sometimes 3 across, depending on the plane. Normally it was 2 in a 3, but these are all first-class seats.
And finally,
off the top.
Floyd Mayweather sat down with our Stephen A. Smith in Las Vegas yesterday, a couple of weeks in advance of his fight with Conor McGregor. And as you'll hear in a moment, He's selling you on Conor McGregor after a four-city tour in which he called him every nasty name you could imagine. Now all he talks about is how Conor McGregor has the advantage over him on paper.
Boy, it's amazing how this whole thing goes when we all say Mayweather will win easily. They go on this tour, yell at one another, and then you find out all the seats aren't sold in the arena yet. Now, all of a sudden, Mayweather, McGregor, he's a fighter. He should be a favorite over me. This is going to be a real fight, gang. Buy tickets, buy pay-per-view, buy more. And that's what this is all
you'll
about.
You'll hear from that in just a moment. Mike and Mike Off the Top, presented by Progressive Insurance. Last year, over 3 million drivers switched to Progressive. Call or click today. Find out if you could save. I just opened up my Twitter inbox here quickly, and I see, here's from Maria Greeny. I love you, but it looks exactly the same. It doesn't look the same.
It looks exactly the same.
That's a ridiculous camera shot.
Andrea, please
post
that. Please post that up. I'll retweet it. Do everything we can to get that out.
We get a better picture of me from yesterday.
What do you want as a better picture? It shows your head with all your hair on it.
Give me a shot of me straight forward. No, get that one down. Why are we putting that up there?
You're basically tilting your head just a bit.
But I'm not facing the camera.
I mean, it's a bit off. You can still see
like
your
mug
hair.
shot. It's like here's the one forward, and then here's the one facing sideways.
It is not a mug shot. Now you're lying. Now you're just flat out lying because you've been had.
I'm not at all comfortable with it. What, you're suggesting I'm making this up? I didn't get a haircut yesterday?
No. I'm suggesting you are overstating something I know you never do. The amount of hair. All of a sudden, you're talking about the hair that's laying on the ground there. There had to be 3 strands of hair.
Oh, no. It was, I'm telling you right now, I mean, it was like we shaved down Chewbacca.
Whatever.
That's how much hair was on the ground around me when I was done with this haircut. Okay. They're trying desperately to get
That's straight on. There is now a picture up that is straight
and look
on.
How much more hair
there is
I had
no more hair on your head.
Yes, there's a lot more hair there.
Get a snapshot of that one. Andrea, get it up. And so for those that are just listening on the radio, at some point be able to see it on social media, and you all will be able to join in the mocking of Mike Greenberg.
All right. It's a mockery, but it doesn't look as different as it feels. I'll tell you that right now. It feels awfully different.
All of a sudden,
as I look at that shot, I can see where you may think that. I can see where the uneducated, those who are not follically, studious.
Right. She went down and got close to the roots, as Chewbacca was laying on the ground around you.
I actually think it looks pretty good.
Whatever.
Okay, we're Mike and Mike. Let's get to business here. Floyd Mayweather sat down with Stephen A. Smith yesterday in Las Vegas. And look, here's the thing that I will say about Floyd Mayweather. There's any number of things you could say about him, and many of them not so nice. But the one thing I'll say is he makes no bones about the fact that he's a businessman. He's not trying to pretend otherwise.
Nope.
So, guys, get the one ready. We have some technical stuff today. So get the one ready where he says, look, we're all going to be smiling after this fight is over. Have that one ready in a minute. But first, here's the one that got all the attention, where Floyd Mayweather basically said, oh, yeah, for all intents and purposes, Conor McGregor, who has never boxed in his entire life professionally, should be the favorite in this thing.
He's a lot younger. You know, when you look at the two on paper, when you look at myself and you look at Conor McGregor, on paper, he's taller, has a longer reach. He's a bigger man from top to bottom, a lot younger. So youth is on his side. And I've been off a couple years. And now I'm in my 40s. So, if you look at everything on paper, it leans towards Conor McGregor.
Nice sell job. I mean, listen, that's all he's doing. There is no chance on God's green earth he thinks he's going to step in that ring and believe anything he's selling right now. Everything they do is to sell tickets and sell pay-per-view. That's everything they're doing right now. And I'm not ripping it. I get it. But I know to take that soundbite, as far as I'm concerned, with a grain of salt, saying he doesn't mean a damn thing he's saying there.
Well, look, let's face it. This is a sporting event that everyone understands is being put on for no other reason.
Right.
It's not as though this is doing anything for Mayweather's legacy.
Nope.
Beating Conor McGregor, whether it gets them, some people won't even count. But some people won't even count that.
Right.
I mean, there will be an asterisk in the minds of the boxing purist that will certainly not give Mayweather this one, considering he's fighting someone who has never fought in this discipline before professionally. So he has if he was going to come back for a fight, for whatever the best fight out there was, it would have been 500 people he would have fought before he would have fought this.
Right.
So there was no reason to bother pretending that this was about anything other than money anyway.
And this is a monster payday for Conor McGregor, who I don't think will ever fight in the MMA ring again. I think he'll try and go above that as far as whatever he's going to do ancillary on the outside of that, but still be involved in it. But do we think he's getting – unless – Well, he's never going to get a payday like this again unless they can build some monster payday that it's worthwhile money-wise to him to get back in the ring. Otherwise, I don't think you'll see it.
So the one where he says we're all going to come away winners, so this thing, that's the orange one? Is that the one you're telling me to hit? Okay,
we're trying here.
In my ear, I heard, we think so.
Yeah, it's just so.
Let's hope for the best.
Come along for a ride with us.
And I don't even think it's orange. To me, that's brown. Now, we've had this colored blind debate before. You look at this button over here, you tell me that's orange.
But you think our orange chairs are red. So.
They are red, and this thing is not orange either. But either way, here we hope is the soundbite where Floyd Mayweather.
Hit the button or I'm giving you a haircut.
I'm going to hit it where he says that no matter what happens, we all come away winners.
When you're fighting at this level, there's no loser. When you're fighting at this level, there's no loser. I mean, I ain't never known a man to make hundreds and hundreds of millions that's a loser. I'm going to walk out that ring with my head up high.
If you lost, I'm 49-0?
I'm going to walk out that ring with my head high. I'm a fighter.
What about your hand? Is your hand going to be raised high?
I'm going to walk out the ring happy.
Yeah. I mean, and what he's saying there, when you're fighting at this level, he's talking about money level, not professional level. He's talking about money level, and he's right. And as I said all along, when this fight's over and Mayweather wins this fight, which I have no doubt that he will, that Conor McGregor should they should meet in the locker room and clink glasses of champagne and say, we did it. Because there are no losers. As far as those two camps are concerned, there are no losers in this one. They are going to walk away with Floyd another, $100+ million payday, and Conor McGregor by far the biggest payday of his life.
There's a 29-second one that I was sent here, guys, that says Mayweather happiest people on earth sound is the one that I'm looking for. Let me know if we have that, because, again, it's the only reason I want to play it for the audience here is that it is a demonstration of the fact that he's not making any bones about the fact
he's not.
that this is a money grab. And all of us are participating in it.
Yes.
All of us are willingly putting ourselves in this. The people who pay $40 to go to a movie theater and watch this thing, the people who pay the $99 to watch it in their homes, and whatever it is, whatever despicable things were said in their media availabilities, their press conferences where they were late and they were nasty and they said one thing after another that made you want to take a shower afterwards for watching, and all of the history of Mayweather and everything else. We're sitting here opening up our own pocketbooks and handing this money directly to them.
He is saying that's what it's about, and there are going to be millions of people willing to give money to it. That's the way this is going to be.
Here's one more. Here's Mayweather, again, making no bones about it.
August 26th, that day, me and McGregor are going to be the two happiest in Showtime. Me, McGregor, Showtime, and the UFC, we're going to be the happiest people on earth. August 26th. We're talking about $1 billion fight. We're talking about $1 billion fight. And, I've already, in the sport of boxing, I've already made somewhere upwards of $800 million.
Listen, I mean, you got to give the guy that. He is a business guy. He understands it. He understands what his value is, and he has maximized it, and he's unapologetic about it. And, I mean, that part of it, I give him credit for not trying to say, listen, this is a show that the world has been waiting to see, and this is going to be an unbelievable test, and will it be the MMA guy? He's not trying to sell it that way, which you might have guessed they would.
He's selling it for what it actually is. We're going to make a ton of money, and a lot of you are going to buy it, and we want to give you a reason to buy it. But now we're starting with this last interview. We may be starting now we're into a little bit of the sell job. Oh, on paper, he's better, he's bigger, he's better. Stop. I mean, just come on.
Yeah, I mean, look, nothing is going to change the fact that if Mayweather doesn't win, it will be one of the colossal upsets of all time.
Without question.
People whose opinions I regard, who know much more about boxing than I do, like Max Kellerman, who don't think that McGregor will even touch Mayweather, and maybe he won't. I have no way of knowing that at all. Again, I've said it from the very beginning. There is a circus. I acknowledge fully. It is a carnival-esque, circus-esque level of interest I have in this. It is not as a sporting event. It is as some kind of spectacle that I'm just curious enough to see what happens that I'm in. And I've acknowledged it from the very beginning. It makes me a sucker, and a sucker I am.
Yeah. And, you heard Mayweather say he's going to walk out with his head held. As I said, he's the win situation he is the amount of money, of which he has plenty of it. Owes a little bit to Uncle Sam still, but he's made a lot of money. But what did I say about no win? If he loses this, legacy done, right? Right?
Certainly damaged.
Greedy. This guy was going to go try to be 50-0. Rocky Marciano was tied with him at 49-0 to go down as one of the great boxers. If he were to lose to a guy that's never had a professional boxing fight, legacy is crushed. Crushed. I mean, it has to be.
That's an interesting question because here's a guy who's 40 years old, coming back after 2 years out of the ring or whatever it is. Does this diminish what he was when he was really at his prime and in his apex, when he was actually a fighter, as opposed to coming back to do this obvious money grab that everyone acknowledges is a money grab? And if he goes out there now and doesn't look ready and doesn't look good and gets caught by some ridiculous punch, does it diminish his legacy to some degree? Yes.
I think it crushes it.
The notion that anyone, if there are people, I don't think there are people out there saying he's the greatest fighter of all time. I don't. No.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
But yes, obviously he has a lot more. McGregor has literally nothing to lose in this fight.
Exactly right.
So long as he walks out of it, reasonably healthy. And Mayweather is the one from a legacy standpoint who has anything to lose, and no one expects him to lose it.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Here we are, back and better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Twitter reaction continues to come in on, of all things, my haircut, which everyone is diminishing.
Lack of.
Lydell tweets, my haircut is identical to the old one. Andrea put up like a fill in the blank, like what can you say about Greeny's haircut?
Right.
And here are just some of the reactions. Identical to the old one, invisible, a trim at best. It's neater. I noticed it immediately. It looks awesome. And finally, Dennis tweets, I think your hair has grown since yesterday.
Maybe that's it, because it sure doesn't look cut.
Funny stuff. Thank you very much for all of that reaction and more. Will Kane is on the way. Hall of Famer Kurt Warner will join us in an hour. Louis Riddick today. Stephen A. from Las Vegas, who interviewed Floyd Mayweather yesterday, will join us as well. And we'll do next question in just a few minutes. But it was UCLA quarterback Josh Rosen who had everybody around the country talking yesterday in a far-ranging interview with Bleacher Report. He said a variety of things, including that football and school don't go together, and that human beings don't belong in school with our schedules. He has been, in the past, outspoken on the issue of amateurism in college sports. Here's a direct quote. Look, football and school don't go together. They just don't. Trying to do both is like trying to do two full-time jobs. There are guys who have no business being in school, but they're here because this is the path to the NFL. There's no other way. Then there's the other side that says, raise the SAT eligibility requirements. Okay, raise the SAT requirement at Alabama, see what kind of team they have. You lose athletes, and then the product on the field suffers. That's one of many different comments he made. He also talked at length about the amount of money that is being made in the sport and the players not getting their share of it. He is an economics major. He's 20 years old, and he is projected to be potentially, if he has a really good year, as high as the number one pick in next year's NFL draft. So those are the issues on the table. Mr. Golick, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, listen, some of the stuff he says, I think we understand. There are some players that don't want to go to college, but they see a path, and not just in football. Obviously, we see it in basketball. They have to go to school for a year to be eligible then for the NBA draft. So there are things I understand in what he's saying. And when he goes on to say, when you're putting in the schoolwork, you have a bunch of people at the universities who are supposed to help you out, and they're more interested in helping you stay eligible. There's some truth to that as well.
Explain. Take that a little further.
Well, what happens is you have academic advisors at school, and in some places, some schools, some advisors, they will steer players toward easier classes, especially during the football season, to have a lighter load and hence to stay eligible. And others will not. Others will steer you to classes that you're interested in, along with the major that you have, but electives as well, to not overburden you or to challenge you. It all depends, on the student. But are there some places where they will guide you into easier classes so you can be eligible? Yeah, that's been going on for decades. But that isn't all they do. There has to be some responsibility on the student as well, saying that, I'm here and want to get an education. And, we can't just put everything. The schools dictate some of this, but players can have a say in it as well on what they want to get. But as I said, 1% make it to the NFL. 85% think they're going to make it to the NFL. So a lot of times they're going to they're going to follow the path of least resistance academically to be able to put their efforts into football. But that's a choice of theirs.
Let me ask one question on the scheduling.
I disagree with what he's saying.
I get it. You're going to have far more thoughts on this. There's one other thing I want to get quickly just on the scheduling, because you would know this and I would not, since you were a player and both of your sons played recently. I have to assume that football practice and other specific football-related team activities take place at specific times.
Yes.
And thus, there have to be some things, some classes I just cannot take because it would conflict with that, right? I'm just making this up. If practice is at 3 o'clock,
right, later in the afternoon,
you can't take a class that is a lecture from 2 to 4 in the afternoon.
My classes were done, depending on the day, at 2 o'clock at the latest.
Right. And that has to mean there are some things you can't take even if you want to. It just, by definition, has to.
Well, yeah, I guess there would be if they're only offered in the afternoon. And my major was business management. My classes to fit my major were Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. I'd start class at 8 in the morning. Be done by 12 or 1 o'clock. Tuesday, Thursday, the classes were longer. They were 75 minutes, and I would finish sometimes at 2 in the afternoon. And the load you carry now. When I was at school, they didn't have the summer school thing, so hours I would take would be from freshman year to senior year, 15, 15, 15, 15, 18, 18, 15, 15 is how it was broken down for me. Now these players can get 6 hours of credit out of the way in the summer, which can be a buffer, can either help you graduate early, or it can be a buffer for you. If you're struggling, you can drop because you have a little bit, to make up. I disagree with him completely as far as you can't do both. You can absolutely do both. And Josh, by the way, let me cue you in. You're not the hardest practicing guy out there, okay? Go look at swimmers, who are swimming in the morning, lifting in the afternoon, and then swimming in the afternoon, the amount of times they do it during the week. So to specific, I would have had a little more respect for what you said if you said athletes who are working 20 hours a week, because that's the other thing that we understand. They're allowed 20 hours a week. Do you go over 20 hours a week? You absolutely can go over 20 hours a week. You can do it by meeting on your own, watching extra film, working out more, whatever you want to do. But that's all athletes at schools. And so I disagree with his premise, and I really disagree with the fact that he said football players' schedule, because there's other athletes out there whose schedule is tougher, who are working harder and are way more tired than a football player. I'm not saying you don't work hard, but what I'm saying is there are a lot of athletes who get the 20 hours a week, who do a little more than 20 hours a week, that are going on and doing school and doing it very well. So I disagree completely with this premise that you can't do both. You absolutely can do both. Now, do some steer you to easier classes? Yes. Are some players there fully with, I have to do this to get to the NFL? Yes. But in football, you have to do it for 3 years as opposed to 1 year in basketball. So some of the general things he said, I understand and agree with from the help. But universities want you to graduate. Right? They want you to graduate. So sometimes do they try and put you on an easier path to graduate given a particular student? Yes, that absolutely happens because they want the number, they want you to graduate. But there are plenty of students out there who don't make it to the NFL but practice 20 hours a week and go on to be scholars and have great grades. And go on and have no problem graduating. So I completely disagree with the premise. I'm more against what he said because he just made it sound like football players are different than everybody else. The football brings in the money, unlike the other sports, but other athletes there are working just as hard or harder, as he is. So that's one thing I really took exception with, which is off topic a little bit.
The thing that I hear when I read these quotes is I think something that sometimes comes with youth, which is there's this feeling of, why can't I just have everything? And as you get older in life, you realize life is a series of making choices.
Yeah.
And it isn't about being able to have everything. It's delightful to say, and we tell our kids, you can have anything you want. You can have everything you want. The reality is life is a menu when you can only choose certain things from it. So as you read further into comments, he's talking about, well, if I want to take easy classes, I could get a degree in this, but I want to get an MBA. And okay, well, maybe you can't do all of those things. Maybe you can't take this specific major and be a football player. That's kind of life. That is kind of the way life works. Life is, I would like, I don't even know what I make an example. here, but as you get into your life after college,
right,
you can do certain things that will not leave you time to do other things. You can't do everything all at once. And that's sort of what I think I'm hearing him saying. The bottom line is, as I read his comments, some of them I think are just obvious. Some of them are, I guess, remotely controversial. The fact that he specifically mentioned Alabama is going to make people upset.
Yeah.
He could have mentioned anybody.
Yeah, wait till Nick Saban gets asked about that.
But my point is, if he had just said, there's the other side, raise the SAT eligibility requirements. Okay, raise the SAT requirements across the board, and then you will lose athletes and the product on the field suffers. If he had just said that, no one would have argued
exactly
with it.
Right, but he specifically said Alabama.
He named the biggest, best team, so people will get upset about it. The overwhelming feeling I had coming out of this was I wanted to say, I don't understand the point you're making. I'm not 100% sure I get the point that he's trying to make. He doesn't like the amateurism set up the way it is. I generally speaking see with that.
When UCLA got its new a deal with
Under Armour deal,
the 15-year, $280 million, he put it out on Instagram that said, what did he say?
We're still amateurs.
We're still amateurs.
Love nonprofit.
Yeah, exactly. So you get that all the time.
Well, I get that. There's a part of me that understands that.
Right.
There's a part of me that is willing to meet. I don't believe in the amateurism model exactly the way that it is currently set up either. And so I don't have any problem with the player expressing his problem. The overwhelming reaction I had to this, while I know the world was kind of set on fire by his comments yesterday, was I'm not 100% sure I understand what he's trying to say. If he's trying to say, look, we work really hard at this football thing, and thus, on some level, we don't have the same educational opportunities that let's just call them non-athletes, non-scholarship athletes, in this case, non-football players have. Okay, I get it. That's probably true.
But also, there are plenty of athletes out there who went on to play in the NFL or other professional sports that have economics degrees or other big degrees, according to Josh, and not, speaking like phys ed or communications or what people think are supposedly lesser degrees, which you still have to obviously work to get. Many players have proven you can. Many players have done that. So just the line, I guess if you take the line in a vacuum, football and school don't go together, I couldn't disagree more. With that. You can make it work. You have to make choices about scheduling your time and doing what you do. So don't tell me you can't put everything into football and then everything into your studies. If you want to, you can. So don't just sit there and make the line that you can't do it, because many players have, and many players outside of football have, as I said, who have just as hard as schedules or harder and are working just as hard as you, Josh, or harder, and they're able to do it as well.
The other piece of this is if the overwhelming point he's trying to make, the overarching point he's trying to make, is that he thinks it's wrong that you should have to go to college to get to the NFL, which is to say there are people who are there, as you pointed out, only for this reason.
Yes.
Well, that's true.
No. As I said, he said some true things. There are basketball is a better example. You think these guys want to go to college for a year? They'd rather just go from high school, but they have to go for a year, and that's even more of a mockery of the educational system. They only have to stay eligible for one semester, not the 1 year, one semester. So that's more of academics really means nothing to those players because they're out. For a football player, that's 3 years. But guys will just want to stay eligible. There are players that just want to make sure they stay eligible to try and take their shot at the NFL. And that's what I think is, I don't think it's wrong to have the dream of wanting to make it to the NFL. When I say 1% make it, there's nothing wrong with 85% thinking they can. There's nothing wrong with having that dream, but that doesn't mean you forego everything else. You can have that dream and work for it and still get a college degree. Josh, you can. You can do football and you can do school. You can do basketball if you're there for more than 1 year and do school. You can do swimming and do school. You can do lacrosse and you can do school. You can do these sports and you can do school. At some point, it is up to the student to make the choice to say, I want to do this, and I'm going to put myself in a position to do this.
So what he's saying is football and school don't go together. They just don't. Trying to do both is like trying to do two full-time jobs. There are guys who have no business being in school, but they're here because this is the path to the NFL. There's no other way.
That's a separate statement to everything else because, yes, and those are players who have made a choice that say, I don't really want to be here. I'm going to take the easiest possible path I can because all I'm working for is the NFL. That doesn't mean you can't do both. It's that player's choice to say, this is the road I'm going to take.
And I'm not exactly, but that's the one where I respond with, yeah, so what's your point?
Right.
I mean, there is
exactly.
You're right. Now, the NBA is trying to create, they're trying to build up now it's called the G League. For years, it was the D League. That might give high school players a legitimate option of some place to go if they're not interested in college. There is no football equivalent to that. There isn't going to be in the foreseeable future. They've tried a million different things. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen.
Basically, if you want to be a football player, now I have long been against the notion that you should have to stay 3 years.
Right.
If a team wants to draft you, they should. But that went to court and lost. So this isn't changing. So, my response overall to Josh, and I don't mind a 20-year-old speaking out and speaking his mind.
I don't mind it.
God bless you.
Sure,
Good for you.
Sure.
If he said those things to me, I think my next question would be to him, what exactly is the point you're trying to make?
Right.
We all know there are people who are in college only because they want to try and make it to the next level, and there's no other way of getting to the next level. I'm not sure exactly who that's hurting. It is giving them an opportunity, again, because the overwhelming majority of those kids who think they're going to make it to the pros aren't. Right. So they will get an opportunity that a lot of other people will not have. We don't sit and worry about all these kids who are actually much more interested in academics, but don't run a 4.3 40, so they don't wind up in college at all. The system isn't set up to protect them or help them. No one's worried about them. We're worried about these kids who aren't taking, who aren't on a path to become doctors. To me, this strikes me as a lot of very obvious comments. I'm not even sure I understand what all the... If he hadn't mentioned Alabama, I think this entire interview might have come and gone and no one would have even noticed.
Right, and but again, he doesn't write the headline, but when a headline is football and school don't go together, I mean, what's one of the first things you think of? Who said this a few years ago? Cardale Jones said that.
I didn't come here to play school. Yeah.
He even said to Josh Rosen, chill, bro. Just play school.
He tweeted at him yesterday, I saw.
Yeah, because Cardale got his degree at Ohio State. So while again, as I said, some of the stuff he said is true about classes and about players' paths and stuff. The overlying sentiment he has, I couldn't disagree with more, and it really offends me to the point when he just singles out football. I know that's the sport he's in, but just like you said, the general statement of if they raise the SAT scores, what some schools may have, but he specifically went to Alabama. If he would have said athletes who have to work 20 hours a week, that could be because all the athletes do. In all the sports, they get the 20 hours a week. So for him to single out football, that took it to it. That gave it a little sour taste in my mouth.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Pick from a range of coverage options with the Name Your Price tool to find a price that works from you. Let's hear from you. Your thoughts on the Josh Rosen comments. We'll have Will Kane in here coming up in a few minutes. We'll get his thoughts as well. Meanwhile, here on Mike and Mike, let's do a quick version of Next Question, Golic. We'll go around the world of sports here, and we'll get a couple of the big questions of the day all over the place. Here we go. First question. What kind of impact will the NBA schedule change have on star players resting during the season?
I think they'll still rest, maybe not as much, but what will be protected, I think, in all honesty, the most that was, while I think coming out of it, they'll talk about it in equal terms of we want to make sure fans that buy their tickets, the 18,000 in the arena get to see that star player. But I think this was about protecting the TV contracts and making sure those guys play on those weekend games, the big nationally televised games.
I actually think if I had to name specifically the impact, it'll be you will know with greater advance notice which games these guys are going to miss. I think you will know that more. You can sort of look at the schedule and be more obvious to pick out the spots where there is significant jeopardy that you will miss one of the players. Next question. What is your biggest gripe with the Undefeateds list of the top 50 greatest black athletes of all time?
I can't have a gripe because it wasn't a 10-person panel who picked this. They opened it up to everybody.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons you have Simone Biles and Gabby Douglas 8 and 9 overall ahead of the Satchel Pages and Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbars and Walter Paytons of the world and Bill Russells. And it's so I can't rip it. If you're asking a bunch of people, some that are 18 years old, 20 years old, 22 years old, and then some 60-year-olds, you're going to get a wide range of athletes. So it's very tough for me to criticize a public list. I can disagree with the order of some of this, which I do, but I can't criticize it.
I feel exactly the same way. This is just a popularity contest.
Right.
And so that's fine. I mean, if you're going to get into some of the specifics, the notion that Tiger Woods is not on it at all is ridiculous. The notion that Kobe Bryant is not on it at all is ridiculous. Yeah. The notion that Bill Russell is 36th is so ridiculous it's hard to even put into words. But Bill Russell stopped playing 40 years ago.
Exactly right.
And the majority of people who voted on this don't know anything about it, and that's just the way the world goes. Right. So I'm with you. There are any number of things on the list that I think make no sense whatsoever, but this is just a popularity contest, and the recency bias is to be expected. Next question, true, false? Conor McGregor has the advantage against Floyd Mayweather on paper.
It's false, because what are you looking at paper? You want to look at height. You want to look at weight. Well, they're going to be basically the same weight. You want to look at reach and all that. Okay, that all goes on McGregor, but also on that paper is never had a professional boxing fight in his career going against a guy who's 49-0. Give me a break.
Right.
Give me a break.
The operative numbers on the paper are 49-0, not Mayweather's record, but the number of fights he's had and the number of fights McGregor has had. Mayweather has the advantage in every conceivable way. The statement is false. Next question. Do you agree with Herman Edwards that Dak Prescott is the worst quarterback in the NFC East? The others, of course, are Eli Manning, Kirk Cousins, and Carson Wentz.
Wow. That's an interesting question. Wow. I mean, Carson Wentz had a nice year, but I don't know if I would sit there and say Carson Wentz is better than Dak Prescott.
If you redid the draft right now, Carson Wentz went second. Dak Prescott went in the fourth round. Would you draft Prescott ahead of Wentz now?
You wonder because you'd have to stop and say, okay, wait a minute. Let's look at weapons around.
Yeah, if you flip-flop the teams they were on, would Wentz have done something approaching what Prescott did?
Yeah, because he had the better talent there. That is a tough question. Wow.
I'll give you some more time to think about it. I would say I do not agree with Herman Edwards.
Who would you think
in the NFC?
You think it's Wentz?
Yeah. If you gave me the option of those two guys right now,
I'd probably lean that way. Dak Prescott picked everything up so well, and you could sit there and say again that he had the luxury of the offense he had, but I just loved what he did. I think I would do that
as well. It's a division with really, really, really good quarterback play.
Yeah.
Next question. The owner of the Timberwolves saying he wants a face-to-face meeting with Andrew Wiggins before giving him a max contract is?
His right. He owns a team. He's the one signing the checks. You want to meet with a guy before you hand him $100 and some million? Why would I have a problem with that? I have no problem with sitting down and having a chat with that guy.
My response is something that should go without saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been the owner of a basketball team, but I can assure you if I was ever going to give anyone a max contract, I'd want to sit down and chat.
Yeah. Hey, everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Okay, keep your eyes closed.
Okay.
I want to show you my first ever painting.
All right.
Okay. Open your eyes.
Oh, that's a lot of colors and shapes.
So be honest. What do you think?
Well, I like how if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds of dollars on car insurance.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Here, why don't I hold your paintbrush while you call them?
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Will Kane is here to, Lord knows what trouble he'll get us into this morning as we'll go all around the world of sports with him. But the very first thing we'll do is I know that you two will bond over your mutual. The first thing you said when you walked in here this morning was you told us how much there was one thing that you heard today that you enjoyed.
That was Golick singing Glenn Campbell. Not just Rhinestone Cowboy. Multiple songs, which I never had you pegged, Golick, for a country guy.
I'm an all country guy. I mean, now but even back then, I loved him. He mixed over into country and pop really well. The storytelling of country music in the pop world. I mean, I love the guy. I love so many of his songs.
Now we can have a beer because 1970s country, that's my wheelhouse.
That's
you go. Where I live, right there. Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, Chris Christopherson. I bet Green.
Yeah, me too. No, Waylon and I.
true?
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of notes here about Glenn Campbell, however. During a career that spanned 6 decades, he sold over 45 million records. In 1968, he outsold the Beatles. Also, from December 64 to March of 65, he was a touring member of the Beach Boys, filling in for Brian Wilson on bass guitar. So a long and varied and extremely successful
number of movies as well.
career.
He was an actor.
I had no idea he was in True Grit.
Oh, yeah, he's in a number of movies, but in True Grit, 1969.
All right, so we start by bonding there, and now let's see where we go. With Josh Rosen in the news yesterday, we talked about it off the top of this hour, his comments about balancing school and football and all the rest of what he said. Will Kane, your thoughts?
I think Rosen sounds a little bit spoiled. I think it's very possible. In fact, we have a long history of athletes balancing football and education, football and school. He says it's a poor fit, football and school together. I think he's fighting a long history and tide of people successfully balancing football and school. And not just football, any sport and school. For that matter, life and school. I was a collegiate athlete. I know how hard it is. I know what it's like to wake up and have a practice from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then come back again and have a practice from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. and to try to schedule classes in that window between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. and then again at night. It's difficult. But difficult and not fitting together are not the same thing. And I think Josh Rosen sounds spoiled because he doesn't know, apparently, what other students in the world go through as well.
But a way of you say spoiled. His you want to say about his upbringing. His father's a doctor. His mother, I believe, is a journalist. So I mean, he's had a I would say I don't know where you would classify that as upbringing.
Comparatively privileged.
Yeah,
but that's that to me. I understand that it's worth bringing that up. This one thing to be spoiled. Look, I think that when you were young, this is the point that I tried to make at the beginning. When you were young, a lot of times, and maybe it is if you the more affluent the background you come from, the more you sort of mind is registered to think this way. Is you sort of feel like life is a series of limitless options. I want to be able to do anything, and that's probably true. But what happens is your mind takes that and says, I want to do everything. Instead of just anything, you've got a big menu and you can choose like one or two things. Like go into the restaurant of life, and you can get an appetizer, you can get an entree, you can get a dessert.
Yeah.
But you look at it and you say, I want everything on this menu.
Well, I think he did say he wanted to own the world.
Well, that's fine.
At one point, that was one of his lines.
That's a good thing to want.
Yeah.
I'd like to own the world also. We'd all like to own the world. Somewhere along the line, we figure out in our lives that's not on the list of options.
Yeah.
Here are the list of realistic options, and it sounds to me like he's a 20-year-old guy who kind of hasn't figured that out yet. I think you said it exactly right. There are some things, I'm sure there are some things that you cannot do in college if you're going to be a football player or a lot of other sport. What sport did you play, Will? I didn't even know that.
Water polo.
Water polo. Okay, so that's a brutal sport. I mean, that's brutal.
The bottom line is, that people listen to that. The bottom line is you have to work the same amount. You get to work the same amount of hours as everybody else. As I said, some of the other sports too. So it shouldn't be just singled out to football.
That's
players.
what I mean. So, okay, but I'm not going to go as far as you did with that because he's being asked that, so he's just saying football. I don't know that if you said to him, do you mean to leave out the other sports? He would have said, yeah, they're not much either. So I get that sort of offends you. That part of it didn't register with me as much as he just sounds to me like a guy who's saying, why can't I have everything?
Right.
And the answer is because life doesn't work that way. If you want to be a football player, you want to be the quarterback at UCLA, you want to have a chance to be, a high draft pick in the NFL and all that comes with that, there are some sacrifices that you make. And one of them might be the scheduling in college is not going to be specifically what you might otherwise want it to be because of the time constraints. That's not a football college thing. That's a life thing.
Absolutely. And for what it's worth, by the way, wanting to own the world is also the motivation of every bad guy in every superhero movie.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily always a good thing. But see, the thing, this is why I say Josh Rosen is spoiled, Greeny, to your point. I don't even think you have to do an athletics comparison. It's not football against water polo against gymnastics. Do you know how many collegiate students have to work their way through college?
Right.
And how many successful people have to do so, not in the luxury of having an abundance of time, but because they have to squeeze it in. J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter on her lunch breaks from her regular real-life job. People do this. People go and do great things while also doing the things that you have to do. And so that he has to go to school and schedule classes while also taking, multiple practices a day for football, that's tough. but that's not also making football and school a bad fit. You can do it, Josh. Many athletes have done it so far.
It's a great point about those that have to work along with going to school when they want to be probably, studying or doing their homework. They have to go, whatever they have to do, bust tables, to make some money to help pay for school or to work wherever, and then they have to find time to do it. So, yeah, it'll be interesting because we have my son on every Friday, and from what I understand from the text from my wife, he wants to jump into this, and he has a far different view on this.
Well, let me just say this. I'm also someone, I don't know where Junior is on this. I think I know where Greeny is, where I don't think athletes should be boxed into having to go to college to make their professional leap. I don't like the one-and-done rule. I think if you have a unique talent in the world, you should jump to being able to monetize that talent. But then let's not bellyache along the way about how difficult it is to do school and athletics at the same time.
I also don't think football lends itself as much to that because there might be, like every single year, there are probably 6 or 7 high school basketball players who could play in the NBA.
Right.
I don't know that would be the case in football just because of the maturation of your body. Ooh. These guys might get seriously hurt. You let an 18-year-old kid, there might be one a year, tops, who could physically handle what it would take to go to the National Football League.
And to play right away as opposed to going into a lesser league, which the NFL doesn't have.
Right. It would be nice. It would be nice if there was some sort of preparatory league, but that doesn't exist.
As a whole, we have talked about that and agree with that, but that's, it's not there. Right. And it's not going to be there, especially when we're talking football and the NFL. So you have to go to school and you have to play football when we're speaking specifically about football. And many have done it. And many have done it extremely well. So that's why a little eyebrow raising.
And again, by mention specifically Alabama, he says there's the other side that says raise the SAT eligibility requirements. Okay, raise the SAT requirement in Alabama. See what kind of team they have. You lose athletes, then the product on the field suffers. People will make a very, very big deal out of that.
And I think he just picked the top team, the machine right now, right?
Do you have an issue with that statement? Is there anything about that particular statement that offends or upsets you, Will Cain?
No, I actually think Rosen has a point on this. If you think about collegiate athletics and football in particular, it's not really an equal playing field. To Booger McFarland's point, he spoke on this yesterday, Stanford and Alabama aren't really competing on the same playing field if they have different requirements of who can come in and be on that team. Different SAT requirements mean you're getting Stanford's just drawing from a smaller pool of athletes that can feed into their football team. So, I think that's a legitimate complaint Rosen has about making SAT scores somewhat comparative, but I don't know how you're going to fix it.
It's also not specific to sports either.
Right.
If you just look at who's going to get into what colleges in America, all of them are the highly selective colleges are taking fewer people and different levels of students
plus you
than
don't
others.
Have to go there. Notre Dame does the same thing. Their requirements are higher. You don't have to go there.
It doesn't have to always be about Notre Dame.
What's that?
It doesn't always have to be about Notre Dame.
Well, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
But Northwestern does too, and so do many others, and that's why. No, but that's just the reality of it.
Right.
So I've said many times that Northwestern, we're not going to be Alabama or one of these other schools like that because you're just not drawing from this. You are just limiting the number of people that could potentially come play for you. That's just the reality.
Here's the value of Rosen's comment on the SAT scores. College is a poor fit for many football players. College is a poor fit, as a matter of fact, for many students. We have over-expanded the idea of college is good for everyone, I think, regardless of athletics or not, that it's always the path to success. It can help, but it's not always the right fit. And taking on hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to get yourself marginally better job prospects for some people is not the right path. So to Rosen's point, just because you can skate in because of your football ability and maybe not stick around once you get there because you can't hack the classes, I would love it for there to be another path to pursue football professionally. It's just that college is a one-size-fit-all for everyone right now, and that's not right.
The best of Mike and Mike.
We have always enjoyed, the two of us over the years, we've talked many times about how much we enjoy Hall of Fame induction ceremonies.
Absolutely.
Be they at the basketball or the baseball or at the football, because you love to hear the stories, the path, the road that was taken to get from wherever the beginning was to that moment in Canton, Ohio. And I think it's probably safe to say there have been very few, if any, paths less traveled than the one that was taken by our next guest and new Hall of Famer, Kurt Warner, who joins us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Kurt, congratulations. What a delight to talk to you, and I hope you're doing well. How's everything this morning?
Everything is great. Always great to talk to you guys as well. been a busy week or so, but what a great week and a fun week to share with my family.
Was there a point, since you were the last speaker, to you wondering if you were going to actually speak on the actual day you went into the Hall of Fame, or was it going to pass midnight before you got on stage?
That's funny because some of the Hall of Famers were joking about that. You're the only one that's going to speak on Sunday, so you're going to have a whole different induction day than everyone else. So, yeah, there were definitely the moments. It was a long night, and it got difficult because a lot of the fans that were there, because it was so long after their guy, so to speak, spoke, they left. So I finally got up there, and you wait for this moment forever, and then you stand up there, and the whole middle of the stadium is empty. And so it was a bit rough from that standpoint. But the people were there that I wanted to be there, in my family, and then obviously lots of people sitting at home watching on their TVs. But yeah, it was a bit crazy how long it lasted.
Mike and Hall of Famer Kurt Warner, I mentioned the road less traveled. It occurs to me we have an audience of people who probably don't know all of the details and didn't watch on Saturday night. So in your own words, how would you describe how it was that you got from where you were towards the end of your college life, let's say when you were 20 years old, to where you were Saturday night?
Well, I mean, the first thing is you have great people around you that help to encourage you. But I think more than anything, when you're kind of taking the road that I took, you need a few people along the way that kind of keep and help you keep that dream alive. And what I mean by that is a few key people that at critical stages, stepped up. I talked about it a little in my acceptance speech. Like a guy like Al Luganville, who, I'm playing arena football, and he calls me in 1996 and asked me to go play NFL Europe. And after, a long story, I told him no. And a year later, he calls back again. I mean, very seldom do you have a guy that you've told no to that calls back and gives you another shot. I mean, obviously, the arena football, when I'm stocking shelves in a grocery store, to have a coach call me and say, hey, we want you to play football for us. And, Iowa was where I was from, and they just started a team. And so, just a lot of moments like that where you're on the cusp of going, okay, how long do I do this? Am I ever going to get another shot? And then somebody kind of steps in and goes, hey, we'll give you a shot to do this. It may not be the ultimate dream, but it's a shot to kind of keep you going and keep that fire burning. And so that was really the key for me, is having some of those key people stepping up at key times.
For those that don't know the path, undrafted with the Packers in 94, Iowa Barnstormers for a few years, of which in 95 and 97, in which I covered many games down in the barn there and really enjoyed that. A year in NFL Europe with the Amsterdam Admirals, and then the Rams, the Giants, and the Cardinals. So you just kind of talked about that, keep the fire burning, the ebbs and the flows. Was there a point, or I would imagine there was, what was the closest point you came to where you thought, this is not happening, I need to get on in the real world?
Well, I mean, I think the closest point came, just in arena football. And that didn't necessarily mean I was going to go back to, quote, unquote, the real world. As you said, I loved playing arena football. I had a blast playing. I fell in love with the game again. It was a perfect environment for a quarterback. I was making decent money. But there was times in there, I played 3 years. As I was getting into that third year, where I kind of thought, okay, that other dream isn't, probably isn't going to happen. How many 27-year-old rookie quarterbacks are there in the NFL where a team's going to step up and say, hey, we need to give this guy a shot? So it got to about that point where I was starting to relegate myself to, well, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the future. I play arena football for 10 years, and I have a professional career, even though it's not the one that I had always dreamed of. And that was probably the closest. Just as I got older, you start to think, oh, man, who's going to do that? It's hard enough to play the quarterback position, then try to groom somebody when they're 27 years old. It was at those moments where I started thinking, okay, maybe it's time to let that go and kind of develop another dream.
And the next thing you know, Trent Green gets hurt, Dick Vermeil is crying, and Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame. We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. So obviously it was a wonderful night, and all of us who have appreciated your career, we're thrilled to see it happen for you. Let's talk a little football with you if we can for a moment here. There's a bunch of stuff going on. You played until you were 38 years old. And we've been talking here the last couple of days about how players are playing and excelling at an older ages. Tom Brady is 40. Roger Federer is 36. LeBron James is 32. Things like that. As you got older, what parts of it got harder? What things became more complicated? And what will be the biggest challenges for a guy like Brady, as great as he is, trying to continue to play at that level at that age?
Well, when I retired, physically, I felt like I could continue to play. I feel like I could still play right now from a physical standpoint. In great shape, can still throw the football, all of those things. The hardest part for me became the mental grind and wanting to do it mentally. When I was here in Arizona at the end, I was asked to do a lot for this team as far as not just playing on Sundays, but helping the game plan, helping to coach some of the things that we were doing. And so it became such a huge grind. I wasn't sleeping very well. The last Super Bowl I played in, I weighed in at 201 pounds, which I had never, I hadn't weighed since I was a junior in college, just because of the stress and the pressure of that. So it started to become more of a job and less fun from that standpoint, and it was taking me down a road I didn't want to go down. Tom Brady obviously doesn't seem like he's going down that road. I think the blessing of situations like that is he's been in the same system forever. And so he knows, what the system's going to be. They know the plays. It's not the stress from that standpoint where they've got to recreate the wheel. So now a huge part of it is staying physically ready, which we know with a lot of these guys, Drew Brees, they keep themselves in great shape. They know the system that they're in. They just kind of have to plug and play. And, then the other thing about a Brady is that he gets the ball out of his hands so quickly that he doesn't take that many big hits. He knows how to protect himself from that standpoint. So all those things combined, I think, lend themselves to being able to play longer. The guys like me and Brady, we played first with our mind and then with our body. So you don't even have to be able to throw it as far as you used to. You anticipate, what you're seeing, you get the ball out of your hand, you're accurate. So it doesn't surprise me because, as I said, I feel like I could have played a lot longer. It was just a mental grind. And I think if they stay away from that, physically, they'll be good enough at that position if they play it by throw first, and not some of these running quarterbacks to play longer.
Pro Football Hall of Famer Kurt Warner joining us. It's got to be nice to be introduced all the time that way now. It's got to be a very cool thing. From the older quarterback and Brady to the younger guys, the Pat Mahomes from the Chiefs, the Mitch Trubisky's from Chicago, Deshaun Watson, who will play tonight from the Texans, Deshaun Kaiser for the Cleveland Browns, all guys that are looking to at some point be the future of their team. So when preseason starts, Kurt, and we're watching these quarterbacks, we all watch them a certain way. What do you watch as a Hall of Fame quarterback? When you watch a young guy play right now, what are you looking for in these young guys to see how they progress?
Decision-making. I think that's, to me, the biggest key always at the position, but especially for young guys, is they might miss some throws early on. I don't worry so much about that, but it's about where the throw is going, and are they making quick decisions with the football, especially when you think about where college football is right now. So many of these systems are these spread systems where it's about numbers. It's not really about reading anything. Guys hold on to the ball and look at one guy. You just can't do that at the NFL level. We've seen that over and over again, that you have to be able to translate it to the NFL, make quick decisions, see what defenses are doing, and get the ball out of your hands. So that's what I want to see early. I think coming in, these guys were at different places in their progression as, a drop back, read the defense type quarterback. So I'm interested to see where they're at. I've talked to a couple people already about Deshaun Watson, and they are extremely happy with where he's at right now. And I felt coming out that he had the best chance to get ready quickly. But it's all different when you get into a game, and teams are doing things a little bit different than you see in practice every day, and you have to think quick and still see what's going on. So that's what I'm looking for is what do they see? Do they see it well? Can they react to what a team does to them early on? Or do they need a lot more work to get used to running offenses the way you have to in the NFL?
Kurt Warner's with us on Mike and Mike. Won a Super Bowl during his career. Also lost 2 of them, and both in heartbreaking.
Hey,
what's that?
I mean, we don't have to talk about that.
Well, we kind of have to set up the next question because I read, and Matt Reiner's the reigning league MVP, and they lost. I mean, you want to talk about a heartbreaker, right? You lose a game that you're leading 28-3, and I saw a story that at their camp, they're not talking about that loss as though it was the Super Bowl. They just are saying, we lost our last game. Last year we lost our last game. They're not using the word Super Bowl. So people try and find different ways, I guess, psychologically to deal with it. There does seem to be something about this Super Bowl hangover. What is it, Kurt? What makes it so hard to come back from that loss?
What makes it so hard is when you feel like you've missed an opportunity. And, you don't get there very often. You understand how hard it is. And, I remember when we played New England, and we were favored. We were, I think on paper, a better team. We didn't play better on that Sunday. But you walk away and you go, man, we missed an opportunity to win that. We should have played so much better. If you're Atlanta, I mean, obviously the huge lead, and you let that get away from you, and you're just like, we should have won that game. So what happens is, instead of really celebrating the last season and celebrating how far they got and how they could have been world champions. It didn't work out, but they could have been world champions. We kind of go, oh, man, we missed an opportunity. We've got to right that wrong this year. And so you carry last year into this year, and you try to, be perfect. And you try to, hey, we're going to take that one final step. And by doing that, it carries with you into the next season, and you can never really be a new team. You can never really let the new season kind of come to you and process that, because a part of you is still holding on to last season. I remember when we lost our Super Bowl here in Arizona, and I told Coach Whisenhunt, I said, one of the biggest things I think we need to do is celebrate where we got. I know we lost at the end, and it was hard, and we want to try to go win it next year. But we have to celebrate that moment because it was a great season for us. When I was with the Rams and we lost to New England, I never felt like we really celebrated that. It was more of a disappointment. Even though we got all the way to the Super Bowl and had a chance and lost in the last play of the game, we didn't really celebrate that season because our expectation was to win it. And so we carried that with us the next season, and we started out 0-5 or 0-6 the next year because we were trying to be perfect. We were going to show everybody that last year was a fluke, and it carries over. And that's why you talk about the hangover is you got to let it go. Every season, win or lose, it's its own season. So you have to let that one go and see what this season is going to bring and be ready for everything. But it's very difficult to do, especially when you lose in a manner on the last play of the game, or you lose in a manner like Atlanta did with a huge lead, everybody thinking they were going to win, and then they kind of blow it.
One of the reasons I've always said about players, the negatives stick with you a lot longer than the positives, and that may contribute to the hangover as well. Kurt, you're a Hall of Famer now. Your wife Brenda, she introduced you to that. Been your best friend forever. You have a house full of kids. Are you treated any differently in your house now that you're a Hall of Famer?
You guys know better than that. Yeah. That definitely does not happen. Still, if there's one place to be humbled in life, it's at home. And so, my kids are always letting me know, even though, like my boys who play football and kind of dream of being where I am, that they recognize, I think, with this, what that meant for me as a football player, and that Dad was a pretty good football player. But they're still the first ones to let me know. As I joked in my speech, I mean, every time they play Madden, they like to play against me and then tell me they intercepted me 5 times, or they tell me how slow I am. And so, yeah, it's the best place in the world because, you can enjoy the triumphs and you can have people there with you when you have the struggles. But they also do a tremendous job of keeping you humble and keeping you where you should be and letting you know, I don't really care how good you were, on the football field, Dad. You're still just dad to us. And, so they're great at that. I haven't got any perks yet for having the gold jacket. Maybe if I wear it around the house, they'll recognize it a little bit more. But I love my family, and they do a great job of keeping me where I should be.
You got to wear the jacket I'm assuming you're wearing the jacket right now, right? I mean, you can't. I would never take to that. I'd shower in that thing.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. It's like, do you wear it everywhere? Do you, is it like a bath robe or something? But I haven't even taken it out of the bag yet since I got it home. But we'll see where we can break it out. All I know is my wife said that gold color doesn't go with a lot of things in her wardrobe, so I'm not sure how many times she's going to let me wear it out with her.
Well, the boss speaks. That's the end of that conversation. I'm with you.
Exactly.
Well deserved and a class act. Congratulations,
Thanks,
thanks very much. We'll talk to you as the season gets started.
All right, sounds great, guys.
Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam.
With an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at lq.com. Good morning, Louis Riddick.
Men, what's going on?
Did you watch any of this, the Ocho stuff?
I saw some of it. I saw a little bit. That what was it called? What's the golf throwing the frisbee?
Froth. Well, it's called disc golf.
I kind of like that one.
Yeah.
I kind of like that one. And dodgeball's sweet now. I mean, I'm all for trying to crush somebody with a ball. Yeah.
On a trampoline. That's just incredible.
Yeah, I'm all for those things, man.
I saw a lot of the football frisbee as well. I watched some of that.
You know what I never did? I never played Red Rover either, man.
You never played the game Red Rover?
I've heard it, but I've never.
Red Rover, St. Louis.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I've heard that as well, but I never played that.
Look, tag in our neighborhood was like basically crush. If you're you're trying to crush somebody and not be it. It was that simple.
Got really physical.
It was the brutal.
In my neighborhood, south side of Willowick, you didn't want to go there.
Yeah, no, we didn't have so much of that. But I did enjoy the Ocho activities. All right, let's get through some business here with Louis Riddick. We've got a lot of stuff. Let's start with the Cutler move. Now, you've been there. You've been in these front offices where something happens. Now, I don't know if you ever lost your quarterback in preseason, but, we all pay attention when it's a quarterback. Mm-hmm. But for teams, they always lose somebody in preseason, right? It could be your right guard. It could be a outside linebacker. So take us to that first meeting. Tannehill's down. Who's in the room? What's the conversation? How quickly do you have to act, and how do you think they arrived at Jay Cutler?
Well, I mean, that starts at the very top. Obviously, ownership, principal decision makers, GM, personnel director, head coach, offensive coordinator, which really in Miami is pretty much all the same guy as far as head coach, offensive coordinator, a guy whose opinion who counts the most, and that's Adam Gase. Look, those kind of situations, especially when you're talking about quarterback, you kind of like really try to get a lot of the opinions out of there, and you ask the guy who's calling the plays, who's teaching that position, what do you want and what do you need? Because that's a very unique position that has a lot of nuance, a lot of relationships built into it. And that's why, look, as much as people want to hate on Jay Cutler, and I've hated on Jay Cutler as much as anyone, I said he's the ultimate tease. And I said, that Blake Bortles was about to take Jay Cutler's mantle as far as being the ultimate tease in the NFL. This is the good fit for them and for what Adam wants to run, how quickly he can get him up to speed, and then how he can keep the rest of the offense moving along. It just makes sense that way. Look, Jay's personality, his body language, his natural intrinsic leadership skills, we can crush them all we want. And we have on national TV in our own homes when we're just sitting there watching the guy. But this is about Adam wanting someone who he was comfortable with, who he didn't feel like he had to slow down the rest of the offense, the rest of the teaching progression as far as what he wants to get done so far in the preseason. And he really thinks that the guy still has talent that can help them win football games. So I know that we're going to naturally make the jump to, why wasn't Colin Kaepernick brought in here and start having that discussion? But if you took all of that out of it and Colin Kaepernick wasn't someone who was sitting on the street right now, I don't think there'd be that much of an uproar over Jay Cutler signing, other than the fact that personally some people just don't like him, which is justifiable in many ways.
If Jay Cutler doesn't play all that well and they don't feel they have a quarterback, Tannehill, they can get out from underneath that after this year. Do you think Ryan Tannehill's days are done with the Miami Dolphins?
I thought this was a very important year for him regardless, because of the fact that whenever you give a front office a way to get out, and they built that into the contract anyway, you don't want to give them any reason to go ahead and exercise that out. even though last year he came off the best year of his career by far, and Adam has been a very staunch supporter of this guy and thought that he unfairly has been judged and that context hasn't been used. Just looking at raw numbers is how people usually judge quarterbacks when people don't really want to like him. They don't really want to know the whole story. And Gase has said, you don't know the whole story with this kid. He's better than you think. So just let me be the judge of what really his future holds here in Miami. So, yeah, I think now, depending upon how this football team does, depending upon how Jay Cutler does, depending upon how much Jay Cutler wants to play pass this year, if he does play well, I think there's a lot of balls up in the air as far as Tannehill's future in Miami for sure.
Yeah, Cutler's a guy who could go from retirement to having an entire new career.
That's right.
If he plays well. There's no reason to think they couldn't sign him and keep it going if it goes better than some expect. Mike and Louis Riddick is here. As far as Kaepernick is concerned, the more time that has gone on, the bigger deal this becomes. And so I think that actually complicates his situation. Back in March, whenever this process began in earnest, the free agency process began, there were a lot of eyes on Colin Kaepernick, and there was going to be a reaction wherever he went. Now, because everything else has happened, all eyes are on Kaepernick, and it will, instead of it being this is the team that signed him, it will be this is the team that finally signed him, or this is the team that was willing to sign him when no one else was.
Yep.
To me, that actually complicates the situation rather than making it easier.
No question. The further and further discussion Greeny gets away from actual football, the more complicated and more hesitant teams are going to be to sign him. Because now the discussion really isn't about so much, even though, later on SportsCenter, I'm actually going to talk about his play on the field. Not many people really want to talk about how good he is or how good he isn't, where he fits, where he doesn't. It's more about, is he being blackballed? Are teams getting together or not getting together and just saying, hey, look, we just don't want to deal with this guy? That's what the discussion's really about here. And the further we've moved through the offseason, now that we're in the training camp, again, it's more about is Colin being done wrong here than it is about what he actually does on the field. And I'm telling you, that makes front offices and owners even more wary of bringing a guy in like that, because they're not going to answer any questions about, okay, is he good in 3, 5, 7-step drops? Do you need to move the pocket for him? What kind of play action passing game do you? People don't want to ask those questions, and owners don't really want to deal with it. And look, their trepidation obviously is very real. It's real. I've talked to people in the league, and just kind of beating this subject around a little bit and kicking it around. It's real. People are worried. People are very hesitant, and the longer it goes on, now that you have a rally coming up, that's not the kind of thing that makes owners want to jump out there and say, I'm going to take the chance. It just isn't.
If this rally is intended to help Colin, which I'm sure that's why they're doing it.
Of course it is,
I don't believe that's unfortunately going to be what's going to happen with this. Do you think he plays this year? We're waiting on an injury. We know that. So it has to be the injury to the right team with an owner that said we're fine with signing him. Do you think that's out there?
You know what? I honestly think from a football perspective, there are teams that would have signed him and said, hey, look, I think we can adjust our offense enough to really highlight his strengths and minimize his weaknesses to where he's better than what else is available. But I think, again, to your point, the longer this goes on, the bigger the discussion gets, the more people are just going to pass. They just are. And I'm not optimistic, to be quite honest with you, that he gets signed.
Give us a thumbnail of what your breakdown will be on SportsCenter. Because there's so much debate.
Yeah.
Most of us didn't sit around and watch every game the 49ers played last year because they were a bad football team.
That's
the numbers were pretty good. The team was really bad. You obviously have broken down the tape. What exactly is he?
Let me look at it big picture first. Look, his offensive line wasn't very good. Mm-hmm. There were many plays where Colin was getting crushed. Couldn't set his feet, couldn't step into throws. They weren't helping him very much at all. His perimeter weapons, not very good. The wide receiver core that he played with was average at best in the NFL. So it's not like there's a bunch of people out there running around with tremendous amounts of separation where there's easy throwing windows for him. That being said, look, Colin is best to me when he is moving his feet and he's outside the pocket and you change what they call the launch point, right? So he's throwing out on the perimeter. He still can put the ball into some tight windows and throw the ball as hard as he ever has. Touch has always been an issue with him. Deep ball accuracy, 11 to 20, 20 to 25, 30 plus, those throws he struggles with. But there are many times where the guy was getting absolutely just harassed in the pocket, and he made some nice throws now. Some plays where he extended time, saw the whole field, distributed the football the way he needed to. That in and of itself, from a football perspective, Greeny, is enough to say he's at least a number 2 quarterback.
Oh.
He's at least a guy who you could put in 4 to 6 games if your starter went down, and he could hold the fort down, and you could kind of massage your offense enough to where he can help you win football games, at the very least. As far as him being a traditional drop back passer and being a 16-game starter at this point in his career, running some of the offenses that teams want to run, look, you're going to find people who say he could do it. You're going to find people who say no way he can't do it. But he should be on a roster. From a football perspective, he should be on a roster.
If he doesn't get on a roster this year, is his NFL career over?
I just think, again, as time goes on and the conversation gets bigger and bigger from a social injustice perspective, which is what Colin was fighting for in the first place, I think people are going to step back and step back and step back. Whether you agree with that or not, and we know that what Colin was fighting for was the right thing, obviously, I think people will they're going to err on the side of caution as far as how they see things.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Here's what I genuinely want to ask you, because we've played the interview, significant chunks of it all morning long. Is there anything in what he's saying that gives you the impression that he is less than 100% certain that he will win this fight as easily as most everyone else thinks he will?
No. I think that it's all to promote the fight. I think he's trying to give the impression that he anticipates Conor McGregor will be tougher than people realize, because Floyd is all about his business and about his money. He's unapologetic about it, and he wants people to buy the fight. But I think he fully expects to embarrass and humiliate Conor McGregor. Whether he knocks him out or not remains to be seen. Hasn't had a knockout in quite a long time. Victor Ortiz being the last, and then, of course, Ricky Hatton. Only 2 knockouts he's had pretty much in the last 9 years. But he is a guy that knows that he's a brilliant boxer. I think he's the greatest defensive fighter we've ever seen. And going into the ring against somebody that has never boxed professionally in his life, Floyd expects to destroy and annihilate and humiliate this guy. I think that's exactly what he's intending to do. He's just trying to sell a fight.
Completely 1,000% agree with you on that. He's selling, and he's also at other points made no mistakes, no thought that this isn't about the money, and he's always been upfront about that. Let me ask you this, because this was a sell job, I completely agree with you. We started to read that all the tickets weren't sold in the arena, and I don't know where we are on the pay-per-view and all that. Obviously, we'll find out at some point. Green and I are going to buy it. We keep talking about people that have bought in and are going to buy it just for the experience of this. Do you think this may not sell as much as others think it may, and maybe that's why Floyd's going into sell mode a little more than we thought?
I think it is going to sell, and I think it's going to sell because of the personalities alone, and it being Conor McGregor. I think Conor McGregor is going to be the biggest reason why it sells, as opposed to Floyd Money Mayweather. And let me explain. Conor McGregor talks trash better than most. I think he does a better job of it than Floyd does, actually. But he's also a guy that steps into the ring and handles his business. He's a knockout artist. That's what he does. And so when you take that into consideration, and you know that as a UFC fighter, like he said, he actually wasn't lying. He does consider it like half a fight. He's like, you can't kick, you can't wrestle, you can't engage in martial arts, you can't do any of those things. He said, this is like half a fight to me. So his mentality is that, okay, going into the octagon, I got to worry about somebody kicking me. I got to worry about somebody elbowing me. I got to worry about somebody wrestling me and, doing finger 4 leg locks or whatever the hell it is, and anything else, because all of that stuff goes in the UFC. All I got to worry about is this guy's hands, and that's it, and he doesn't have knockout power. I'm taller, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm rougher, et cetera, et cetera. The belief from Conor McGregor is that I can walk through this guy. I'm not trying to box him. I'm trying to get to him so I can put him to sleep. And Conor talks the amount of smack that where he means it. That's exactly his intent. We just don't believe he's going to be able to pull it off. But he does. And knowing that, that's what makes it interesting, because he can sell you on the fact that he believes he can do it. And that's the difference.
All right, so we're about 2.5 weeks away from the fight at this point, and we'll see what winds up happening there. Mike and Mike, Stephen A. Smith, were presented by Progressive Insurance. A couple other quick things before we let you go. We went through some of the NBA scheduling changes that the memo came out yesterday, and it's still being finalized, and teams can still ask for a couple little things. But clearly, the league and the Players Association are trying to make some changes that will address the issue of player rest, the frequency with which it happens, and certainly try and protect the national television games. I'm sure you've had a chance to see it. What is your general sense of it, and how much difference you think it will make?
My general sense of what, Mike? You went out for a second. I apologize.
Sorry,
of
how much difference the new schedule, some of the changes they're trying to make, will make with regard to player resting in the NBA and particularly protecting the big national games on Saturday nights and the TNT games, et cetera.
Anything that cuts back on the back-to-back games is going to be an asset for the league. Number one, guys are going to be more rested. And number two, they're not going to have the excuse to sit out games the way that they did last year. A matter of fact, make no mistake, the guys, they missed the games that they missed, and they sat out the games that they sat out just to make that point, to make sure and to force the NBA to modify the rules to some degree or the scheduling to some degree, because the players religiously have resented that for years. And it's something that they wanted to address. So they made the league suffer by sitting out games, having us go off about it, and bringing negative publicity to the league for that issue, forcing the league to take a stance on it and to make modifications. That's exactly what the intent is. And as long as they get to cut down on back-to-backs, it's going to be fine.
Wow. All right, that's interesting. I had not heard that before. And very quickly, Stephen A., just because it's something that fades away into the background, but it's still hovering over everything, where do you believe we are right now with the Kyrie Irving trade?
Well, I think that Cleveland has to get rid of him. I think that it's very, very clear that he doesn't want to be in Cleveland with LeBron James for this upcoming season. I think LeBron James is salty about it. He's going to be a professional and deal with whatever circumstances are presented to him. But I think they understand that in terms of that locker room and what it takes to really, really pursue another championship, the likelihood is that they're going to have to move on from one another, because that's going to be the storyline all year long if they don't. It's all we'll be talking about. It's all they'll be asked about. And as a result, it'll be problematic for them.
Another topic going around is the 20-year-old quarterback at UCLA, Josh Rosen, who has come out and basically said football and school don't go together. Said some other things about some players don't want to be in school, and some other things about how schools help or do not help. But your general consensus on and thought on his belief that a football schedule, nobody should have a football schedule and have to do school at the same time.
I don't have much of a problem with it because of the sport that we're talking about, Golick. If it were basketball, I would not want to hear that, because you have the license to come straight out of high school, or actually just be out for 1 year and then go pro. So because of that, it would bother me more if it were a basketball player, because the road to the professional ranks is significantly easier, whereas in the sport of football, you can't come straight from high school to the pros. You've got to put in at least 2 years in school before you're even allowed to enter the NFL draft. So because there's that developmental process that they mandate take place, I don't have a problem with a collegiate athlete feeling resentful for that when they know they have the ability to go to go to the next level. If their mentality is, damn, I got to be here in school for the first 2 years before I'm allowed to do that, I can understand their resentment in that regard, because why wait if you don't have to?
Well, I mean,
I accept that in football more so than other sports.
It's two different things. I mean, if you want to, if you don't like the rule, understandable. But to say that they don't mesh, to say, okay, I have to go to school, you can not like that. But then to say nobody should have to have a football schedule and go to school, to me, that's kind of a separate thing. Saying you can't do both.
You're right. You're right, Golick. I didn't separate the two. I was just speaking from a generic perspective as to him saying, the point about football and, it doesn't mesh with school. In other words, I wish I could just go straight to the pros. I wish that I didn't have to go through this process. I was thinking about it along those lines. I didn't compartmentalize it the way that you did, Golick.
Gotcha.